everyone. Welcome to a special bonus episode of Antidotes. This is your host, Christine. Did you not get enough heart-wrenching and mildly depressing stories on Monday? Well, now you can have them on Thursday. So, working in healthcare is like being a part of a family. And when you meet someone or talk to someone that's also a nurse or also an EMT or medic, and even if you've never met them before, all of a sudden you start swapping stories and it kind of gets a little bit out of hand and you'll just keep going. Haley and I recorded the story about Jane, and we had such an amazing reaction from Monday's episode, Nurse Jane, that I wanted to share with you some of the additional stories that Haley and I talked about after we were done recording. Just as I was about to hang up, she goes, "Oh wait, I have one more quick little story about when I worked at cardiac arrest in Saudi Arabia." We started talking and I said, "Oh no, I need to record this." And then this entire bonus episode came about. So I thought you guys would like to hear it. And I just wanted to say again, Haley and I connected on social media. So if anyone out there has some really cool or really heartwarming, moving stories of their own and you want to tell them on the podcast, please do get in touch with me. I would love to talk to you. It doesn't matter where in the world you are. We will figure out some time zones like I did with Haley, and we'll get you on the show. I really want to hear what you have to say. Send us an email at antidotespodcast@gmail.com. Join the Facebook group, Antidotes Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Antidotes Podcast, or send us a tweet at Antidotes Pod or me, Christine, the NP. And we will definitely find a time to talk, and I'm sure we will have plenty of stories to share. If you guys like these bonus episodes, if you want to hear more stories like this, let us know. And as always, please give us some reviews and ratings so we can have more people listening and sharing these stories. All right, enough of this. On to the story of the cardiac arrest in Saudi Arabia. So this one, you're in Saudi. No.
Yeah, I was working in Saudi Arabia actually as a teacher now.
Okay.
So nursing has been left behind in the UK. I lived there for a year working as a teacher at a university on the women's campus, obviously. And,
which is crazy that it's separate, but
yeah. Saudi is a very strange place to me.
to me as well.
So yeah, so it was the end of the work day. I was in my final class. And there was a student, not in my class, I didn't know any of this was going on, but I'll kind of give you the preamble of up to what happened with me. So student felt unwell in a class. She had a heart condition anyway, 18 years old. Her friends had taken her to the cafeteria to just like kind of give her something to eat and a drink and see how she goes. Came a bit more unwell, so somebody went to the clinic that we had on campus with like a doctor and a couple of nurses. And the nurse came with like a wheelchair or something to come and get her. And they started taking her to the clinic in the wheelchair. So I left my class about 5 minutes early because I really needed to go to the bathroom. I was absolutely desperate, and I was like, "Okay, girls, right, we're going to finish now." So I raced to the bathroom. I was like, "Right, I'm okay now." And as I was walking back to my office, I bumped into one of my colleagues, also one of my friends, because we worked with the same company, lived in the same building. So we were just having a chat together. And as I walked back into my office, obviously everybody there knows I'm a nurse. Walked back into my office, and one of my colleagues, "Haley, they're doing CPR on someone downstairs." And I'm like, what the hell? So I literally threw my bags at her, and I was like, "Where?" She was like, "In the courtyard." So I raced down the stairs.
The nurse signal.
Get out in. Yeah, race down the stairs, get out into the courtyard. And there's obviously a big crowd of people, so I kind of walk up to the edge of like what's happening, and I can see them doing like CPR on this 18-year-old girl.
Oh God.
Yeah, so I'm like, right, she doesn't look a good colour at all.
Usually you don't with CPR.
Yeah, and so there's like an oxygen tank next to her, and there's a mask over her mouth, and they're doing chest compressions, and I'm just looking at this whole situation thinking, this isn't right.
Like a bag valve mask, or like it's just a non-rebreather mask?
Literally just it wasn't even a non-rebreather mask, it was just a standard oxygen mask.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, why aren't they doing mouth to mouth? They're like trained medical professionals.
Allegedly, okay.
Yeah, so I'm like, right. And just all this is happening within like seconds, and I'm thinking, I need to take over. This isn't right.
Yeah,
I need to do something.
This is my show now.
So I kind of moved around the other side, and obviously a lot of my colleagues were there, the teachers, because obviously everyone was finishing their classes for the day and were walking through the courtyard. So a lot of my colleagues were there, the English teachers. So everyone's like, let Hayley through, let Hayley through. Like, she's a nurse, she's a nurse. So I get down and I'm like, I then start doing mouth to mouth on her, like, take the mask off, and I start doing mouth to mouth. And somebody, like, I think was questioning. I was like, I'm a nurse. I'm like, right, we need to start doing mouth to mouth and do rescue breaths. So I started like counting then and taking charge. I was like, right, I'll do the breaths, you do the chest compressions.
Yeah.
And then I was just looking at them and I was like, you're really not doing the chest compressions very well either. So I was like, right, somebody else do this. I'm going to start chest compressions. Let's swap over. It's like, you've been doing it for a while now. Let me take over.
Yeah, you're going to get tired.
Yeah. So that I started doing the chest compressions, and then somebody else, I was like, right, you do the mouth to mouth. But they weren't even like tilting the head back and opening the airway to do the mouth to mouth. And I was like, so I kept having to move one of my hands to like going, like, say, no, do this, and like back onto the chest compressions. And then this person who'd been doing the chest compressions before said something to me, and I was like, well, you're not doing them right. She was like, I'm a doctor. And I was like, well, you're not doing them right.
A doctor of what?
Yeah, so I was like,
you're not a cardiologist.
Yeah, we carried on, and obviously somebody had called an ambulance and things, but everyone was like, how are they going to get in? Because obviously ambulance are men. It's literally ambulance men, and we're a women's campus of a university.
Wait, so they weren't allowed in?
Well, they were. I think generally they're not Saudi males who work on there, obviously because of religion, cultural laws and things like that. But they are obviously men.
Right.
Women don't do that job in Saudi Arabia.
Well, because you can't drive. Or they couldn't.
They can now.
They can now.
They can now. Yeah. So, but the problem was the gate and entrance into the actual into the campus through the walls was at the main gate where everybody comes to pick up their children and like their daughters and stuff at the end of the day. And the queue of cars is literally outside of the car park. So the ambulance had trouble getting in because they went to the busiest gate, really.
Yeah.
So it took them a little while to get in, and we just carried on. And then, so they turned up. The guy came out, obviously had the AED, put the pads and everything on to like test her rhythm, and it was she wasn't in a shockable rhythm, so we just carried on with the CPR. And I said, like, have you got like I need O2, I need like oxygen, like mask and everything, like bag of mask. And I was like, gave me the bag of mask and stuff, and I was like, I need an airway, like I need to protect her airway and stop her tongue. And somebody had to go back to the ambulance to get a Goodell airway for me, and then they just gave it to me, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll do this then. So I put I put the airway in, and like I was like, right, okay, protecting their airway, got the bag of mask on, I'm doing this. And then I think like basically maybe like what you guys have in the US, where you have the BLS kind of crew and then you have the ALS crew. So a car turned up then, and we got her on the stretcher and everything and put her in the back of the ambulance, and then I left. And I was kind of like traumatized by this experience, like, because we obviously women can't drive or anything, so we had transport provided for us from our company. Usually the bus would leave about 10 minutes before I actually got outside, so I'd also got somebody to bring my abaya, so the big long black kind of dress that you have to wear over the top of your clothes, so I didn't have to go back up to my office. And I got back onto the bus, and I was just like, everyone's like, are you okay? And I was like, no, I'm not okay. So yeah, that was kind of traumatic, but what kind of we found out after that, like the next day, we kind of all went into work as if to like get back into it, as if nothing had happened. And I was sat in the office and somebody was talking about it, and I literally just burst out crying. And then there was a girl next to the girl who sat next to me, one of my colleagues, she burst out crying. Another teacher burst out crying. I was like, oh, it was really traumatic. But what I didn't realize is that they were kind of directly involved in it as well. When they first found out that this girl was like sick and something had happened, they did have an oxygen tank, but for some reason this oxygen tank wasn't in the clinic. It was in a cupboard somewhere on campus. So they had to try and find somebody who had the keys. They had to try and find the right key. And then when they found it, there was no oxygen in it.
Oh, God.
And this is the tank that was next to her when I got down there, and they had the oxygen mask on her. So I found...
it was empty?
Yeah, I found this out the next day, that oxygen tank was actually empty. There was no oxygen in it. And I was like, oh my God, this just gets worse and worse.
Were they nurses too, or they're just English professors?
No, they're just English teachers. Yeah, they're English teachers. All their education, their degrees are in and that's what they do for a job. But the
Not Saudi. Are they Saudi or are they foreign?
no, they were both American.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we kind of had, it was a really good mixture actually. There were people from all over the world who worked there teaching English. Yeah, so, and then I also found out that it was one of them who was kind of walking through and saw them wheeling this girl out in the wheelchair into the court, like through the courtyard to go to the clinic. And she looked and she was like, something's not right about this. And she was kind of slumping out of the wheelchair. She'd already gone into cardiac arrest.
And no one noticed.
Yeah. So I think it was one of the teachers who then was like, something's not right about this. And they kind of stopped them and that's when they got on the floor. And then they, like, I don't know.
Well, they wouldn't necessarily notice.
Yeah, so they were just like, yeah, this isn't right. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, they got her out the wheelchair and onto the floor. And obviously somebody had gone to the clinic to get other members of staff and whatever, and somebody had eventually started CPR. Unfortunately, obviously she passed away.
Yeah.
But my kind of take home from it and what I said to my my managers was, okay, she had a heart condition, so maybe she wouldn't have survived anyway, given like good, effective CPR.
Yeah.
I said, but if it had been a teacher who'd had a heart attack or something on campus, I said something that, given like prompt, good treatment, can be fixed, like sorted out.
Yeah.
And if they'd have gone into cardiac arrest, they would have died.
Yeah.
Like, if that's the care that they received yesterday, they would have died. No
anyone
question.
Would have died.
Yeah. So I was kind of trying to put fear into them of saying, like, something needs to improve. And they were like, right.
You would think a dead 18-year-old would be enough fear.
Yeah. But I don't know, cultural, managerial. The other thing was, obviously, because it was one university, but male campus, female campus, all of the decisions and the orders came from the male campus. So even though we had managers at our campus, they had managers. It was the male campus who were basically in charge of everything and all the decisions that were made for the female campus. So they didn't have as much autonomy as they probably should have. Yeah. So it was kind of traumatic, and they were like, right, okay, we want you guys to get together and like maybe come up with some recommendations of what you think like needs to happen. So we were like, yeah, that's great.
Full oxygen tanks.
We'll do that. Yeah. In the clinic,
right?
In a random cupboard.
Doctors that know CPR.
Yeah. Well, that was the other thing I was saying. I was like, if that doctor had been in like the UK, they would have had criminal charges brought against them for negligence.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're completely incompetent. Like, what they were doing, there was complete and utter incompetence that I witnessed, and it still sticks with me today, and it kind of still traumatizes me a little bit when I think about it properly, just because of everything. Obviously, coming from the UK, like working in accident emergencies for like 5 years, and like everyone being competent, basically.
Right.
Knowing what to do, knowing how to do their job, but then I kind of think, don't be that horrible and think really bad things about this doctor. She's a doctor on a university campus where all she gets is, oh, I haven't eaten today, I feel sick, or I feel faint, or I have a headache. So it's like, what training is she being provided with by her employer? And it's like, how up to date is she? It's like, are they actually providing her with what she needs to be up to date and competent? So there was that kind of side of it as well. It's like, I felt a little bit sorry for her because the situation she'd been put in, but you're a doctor, it's your license,
right?
You should be competent to do these things, especially something as basic as CPR. It's like, everybody knows CPR, even like receptionists and admin and like the cleaners who don't have any direct like medical contact in hospitals know how to do basic life support, and it can obviously save lives.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that the guilt that doctor has for that girl dying too.
Yeah.
But you did go to medical school, and they do teach you that, I would hope, in Saudi medical school. But you're right. I mean,
she wasn't actually Saudi. She was from somewhere else.
Okay. Well, wherever. I would assume that they teach you.
Yeah. She wasn't Saudi.
A cardiac arrest, especially on a young person, is so traumatic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was a lady there, obviously with Islam and stuff, and they have different views on death and things than
Sure.
I do as a non-Muslim. And there was a lady there, she just kept saying basically in Arabic, just enough, enough. And I was there saying, even me and the doctor were just there saying to her, I was like, no, until help arrives, we carry on,
Right.
basically. This is our job. This is what we do. It's like until somebody comes to take over or tells us to stop, who is medically trained, then we're just going to carry on and do this.
Right.
So I was just like, no, just be quiet, please. This is not helping me at all. But I actually met the girl's family as well, because in Islam they have their kind of funerals very quickly, and it was actually the next day. Well, not the next day. This happened on the Wednesday, and her funeral was on the Friday. So I said, I really want to go to it. So there were a few of us who took some time off of our classes and were allowed to go. So I actually went to a mosque for the first time ever, and there were a few of us, and we sat there, and there was one of my students actually from a different class, and I said, "Oh, did you know her?" She was like, "No, I've just come to pay my respects." And I was like, "Oh, that's really nice." So we went in, and one of the teachers was there. She's like, "Oh, this is her mother." So I asked my student, I said, "Can you kind of translate for me?" And she's like, "Yeah, of course." So I said to her, so she told her mother who I was and everything, and she basically she's like, "Thank you for everything you did. Thank you for trying."
Oh.
And I was just trying not to burst out crying in front of her, and I was just like, this is oh. And her sister was there and her aunties and everything. This has turned into a really long story, but
No, this is so
side
good.
note on this: somebody had a diabetic hypo in the mosque at the funeral.
Oh
no! Yeah, so when they were doing all the prayers and everything, me and some of the other teachers who obviously aren't Muslim, we just sat in the back and just watched, and we kind of held hands together and were crying a little bit. And we were just watching and listening and things, and then the prayers came to an end, and there was a little bit of a commotion. This lady, who was obviously elderly and stuff, she was sat on a chair. She obviously wasn't doing the prayers on the floor because of her age and stuff. So I was like, what's going on? So I got up and started walking over, and one of the other teachers, she was like, "Haley, come here."
Nurse
and I was like,
investigating.
"Oh no, what's happening now?" She was sort of out of it a little bit and not quite with it. So I was like, right, we need to get her on the floor. So we got her on the floor and stuff. And obviously, we're trying to communicate. These people obviously don't speak English. I don't speak any Arabic, and there's very few people who speak both languages there. So we're trying to figure something out. And then somebody said sugar. And I was like, she's diabetic. She's having a hypo. Somebody get her some sugar. Yeah, so I was like, right. So somebody got some orange juice, and there was some sweets and stuff. And she was with it enough, luckily, for us to give her something to drink, and a sugary drink. So she started coming round then. I'm like, right, okay. So we moved her out of the way, got her to the back of the room and stuff. And I was saying, somebody she needs to go to hospital, woo woo woo. And she was like, no. I was like, she needs sandwiches, she needs carbs, just make sure if she doesn't want to go to hospital, she needs something substantial to eat. She needs just feed her carbohydrates. And I was like, oh my God. And everyone's like, Haley, are you just attracting this now? And I was like,
It's
maybe.
been a rough 48 hours.
Yeah. It's I became the campus nurse. Even the management, they were like, Haley, we've got a student who's having trouble breathing. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? So yeah, I was kind of the resident nurse in the end. And it's all the teachers, they wouldn't go to the clinic. They would all come to me and ask my advice and stuff. And it's I think I maybe need a new job title and more money.
Pay me more, please.
But it never happened. Yeah, that never happened though. So yeah, that's my Saudi story.
Oh, that's crazy. But
just a bit.
At least you gave her a fighting chance.
Yes, I know. I'm happy because I know I did everything I possibly could from the point that I arrived to the point that I handed her over to the ambulance. So,
and sometimes in cardiac arrests, I mean, I've heard so many of them out of hospital that you just know that it's not gonna work, but you can look at the family in the eye and say, we did everything we could.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've ever had an out of hospital one, obviously, because I've always worked in hospitals and stuff. So yeah, it's the first.
They are much more chaotic.
Oh, definitely. Especially when you've got all the teachers going, men are coming to all the students hanging around. So they're trying to shoo all the students away, and it's go home, men are coming. That's all I can hear when I'm there doing CPR, and it was so bad and everything that you have to laugh as well about it.
I did we're going on a tangent here, but I did a cardiac arrest at a family reunion.
Oh God.
Oh my gosh. And the family showed up to the woman's house and she was down on the floor. She had coded on the toilet, so she's
Yeah.
half naked.
Oh God.
And we were the first. We beat the police. We beat the fire department. We get in the house and she's just in the kitchen on the ground. She had a brain bleed, which we found out later. And all of a sudden there's 40 family members and we are
Wow.
the only professionals there. And they are screaming at us, like, do something, do something. Of course, no one had started CPR, but we're like, what happened? Like, you're trying to get a story from 40 people that thought they were going to be having a party. And then everyone's like, what are you doing? What happened? And like, you're just trying to like stay focused and like, where are the police? And then the fire department showed up and everything, especially in an out of hospital cardiac arrest, time stands still because it's just so chaotic. And then eventually we got her on the backboard. We got a rhythm back on her. And because it was precipitated by the bleed, and she actually had not been down that long, we ended up doing the stat transfer from the community hospital down to a big Boston hospital for so she could get to a neurosurgeon. So we for once got follow up on it. But
great.
It was a circus. So I can they weren't yelling men are coming. They were just yelling. A lot of yelling.
Men are coming. It's just one of the things that just kind of sticks with me and just makes me laugh. It's like, men are coming. Yeah. But I mean, the other thing is, like I say, it's like I did everything I could.
Yeah.
There is a slight bit of guilt about my bladder because if I hadn't have finished my class early to go to the bathroom, I would have been walking through the courtyard right when it happened. So I would have, I mean, obviously, she probably went into cardiac arrest before they even realised it, so I may not have been able to do anything more, but I would have been able to start CPR quicker and more competently.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, my bladder could not hold for much longer, and I had to finish my class early, so bad timing.
By that same logic, you could have had the flu and not gone to work at all that day.
Yeah.
So you can play the what if game all day long, but you did what you did, and it's incredible you got to see the mom and have a little bit
it was kind of I went to a wedding when I was there. Like, one of my colleagues got married. I went to a funeral and there were so many pregnant women who were working. I was like, am I going to deliver a baby? So like all three,
the holy trinity of not in this
everybody was saying, everyone was saying it was like wedding, funeral. And then so many of my colleagues were like, do you know how to deliver a baby? I was like, I better get onto YouTube. I'm sure there's a YouTube video for that one. We were all laughing about it. And I literally, deep down, I was thinking, this could literally happen. This could be real. There are so many pregnant members of staff at the moment. It could happen. Luckily, it didn't, because I have no experience on that side of this.
Yeah, outside of clinical rotations, I do not do babies. I am pregnancy. No, thank you. I like my geriatrics and my adults.
Yeah. Well, I never did any sort of like midwifery or anything. It's like everyone's kind of like, oh, like tell me good stories about like working in A&E and stuff. And it's like orifices and things like that. But from like off the top of my head, I don't really remember like comical like tales of stuff. It was just all your generic things like, oh, somebody's had a heart attack. Oh, they've got pneumonia and they've broken something. There's nothing really that interesting that ever really happened.
Well, you get so desensitized too. Things that normal people would go, oh my God, they're dying in front of you. You're like, oh, I know, that's Wednesday. 7 people did that last week. Oh my God, I hope 7 people didn't die on you last week. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I remember like there was one shift, again, when I worked in Blackpool that was really, really busy. We had trolleys on like the corridor and stuff. And like kind of the way it was laid out, we had a big area in the middle that we could actually fit 3 trolleys in the middle. So, and it was like where our drug cupboard was and different things as well. And I remember there was a patient in there and it was started off her assessment and stuff, just taking blood pressure and things. I was like, I really need to do an ECG on her. And I think she'd just come in like feeling a bit off and feeling like sick and that. But because of her age and stuff, I was like, right, I'll get an ECG done. And the resus area was actually really quiet in there. So I was like, I'm just going to pop her into resource, get an ECG done on her, and then we'll come back in here. And they're like, yeah, sure, you might as well make the most of it. So I took her in there, did the ECG, looked at it, and went, I'll be right back. Went and got a doctor. Even like reading ECGs is not one of my fine points, but massive like tombstone, like kind of on it. And I'm like, be right back. And went and got a doctor. I was like, you need to look at this ECG right now. And they were like, whoa, where was she? I was like, she was in Majors. She's now in resus because I needed to do the ECG. So then they just took her in there. And it was just, I thought to myself, it's like, thank God I made that decision.
Yeah.
She had no chest pain or anything. And it was just because we were that busy. We didn't have a cubicle for her to go into where we could obviously do an ECG. And it was resus luckily was quiet that day. So I was like, right, I'm going to use my brain and I'm going to take her in there and get an ECG done. And I'm so happy that like kind of everything kind of fell into place that I did that at that point, because they ended up taking her straight up to the cath lab and kind of investigating what was going on.
That's your nursing judgment. That's what you get from experience of just this isn't right. I'm going to look into this. And you go, oh shit, this is really not right.
Definitely. It was just kind of like, I saw it on the screen. I was like, and then it started printing out and I'm like, I'll be right back. Obviously they're like, is it okay? And I'm like, I usually say, oh, I don't read ECGs. I leave that up to the doctors. So I'll just go and get the doctor to have a look at it. And it's like, look at this right now. It's crazy, like, especially like older patients and stuff. They have one thing and you kind of find something else. And like, but are you going to treat this? And you're like, yes, we'll get to that at some point.
I really just want to.
But it's like, that's what they know is immediate. Like, that's their problem. And they're like, no, I want this to be fixed. I don't care about anything else.
My heart feels fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, pretty much.
It feels fine now, and that's good. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed this special bonus episode of Antidotes. If you would like to hear more bonus episodes, please reach out to us on social media at Antidotes Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Send me an email if you want to be on the podcast and share your own story at antidotespodcast@gmail.com, or send us a tweet at antidotespod, or me at Christine the NP on Twitter. And as always, please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. We will see you next week.